What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Dr. Ethan Turner back for Week 14 injury report. Ethan, the season is winding down. And we've been saying here over the past couple weeks, now we've entered the territory where some of these somewhat minor injuries may be season-ending because the season is almost over. We got a laundry list of names to go over here once again, but the fantasy playoffs are right around the corner.
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are. And hopefully everyone out there listening, watching, made it to the fantasy playoffs, and this is super useful. If not, still watch, hopefully still enjoy the content so that you can know for next year who's hurt and who you need to know about.
That's absolutely right. But hey, some good news. We have no moment of silence today, so that's a good thing, right?
Well, hold up right there, Jake, because the problem is that I think we should have an early moment of silence because I don't know if you saw, but our teams are going at it in the Headliner Dynasty League in the playoffs this week. And so I think everyone can agree after our last performance where I beat you by 40 that we should just have an early moment of silence for your dynasty team in the Headliner League because there's no chance that you're going to beat me.
Well, first off, I ended with a better regular season record than you. I finished, I think, 9-4. So I'm not a pushover of a team at all. You caught me on a bad week last time. I had some injuries I had to deal with. I blame that on you being the injury guy. So going forward, I'm looking for a bounce back. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'll have Josh Jacobs. We'll talk about him in a few minutes, but I could definitely use a healthy Josh Jacobs. So if you're over there with like one of those dolls that you're like poking and stuff, we got to stop that because I may need him this week. You do, don't you? You are totally sandbagging it with Josh Jacobs, aren't you?
I'll be honest. I don't have any Josh Jacobs in any fantasy leagues. So there's not really much for me to say outside of that.
Perfect. Well, all right. Now you're trying to stack the deck against me, but oh well. Hey, good luck this week. You're going to need it. But let's go ahead and get into our first segment here, which you just out of nowhere added, was it last week or the week before, where we say get out of here because these are guys who are already ruled out. It's a little bit later in the week because we had some Tuesday, games. So now we already know some guys who aren't playing. Who is on that list here this week?
The first guy we got here is Denzel Mims. He actually isn't injured, but is dealing with a family emergency, already been ruled out. Joe Mixon. Gosh, this one sucks, but Joe Mixon has a midfoot sprain, possibly a fracture. I'm starting to wonder if this isn't more of a Liz Frank type of injury. I'm waiting to hear about potentially surgery, but this has clearly been way worse than what they originally said. Either way, we saw this exact same thing play out with AJ Green last season, where the Bengals kind of strung us along and, oh, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And then by the end of the year, it was like, yeah, he's not coming back. I think we're kind of almost at that point with Mixon. I think there's a good chance that he doesn't play again this season. So I'm not saying go drop him if he's on your IR. You can keep him on the IR, but just know that you probably need to plan to not have Joe Mixon again.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, there's question marks at the quarterback position, whether it's Brandon Allen or Ryan Finley this week, but regardless, neither one of those guys are going to pull defenders outside the box to stop whoever is running the ball in Cincinnati, and Gio hasn't done anything in weeks regardless. So, yeah, I'm starting to think also that we don't see Joe Mixon until 2021, but we'll have to wait and see for that one. All right, let's go ahead and head in to a couple of our big hitters. Now some of the bigger names a lot of people waiting to find out about, and the first guy here on the list is going to be Christian McCaffrey. We were all primed up to have Christian McCaffrey come back this week, and now we've got some midweek news that has broken a lot of hearts, Ethan.
Yeah, it really has. He was dealing with a shoulder injury the last few weeks. Of course, he's dealt with things all season this year, but we just learned that last week while he was training, he had a little bit of a quad strain, a little bit of a thigh issue here. And he was injured in practice last week and was limited Wednesday, but potentially suffered a setback in that practice because he didn't practice at all on Thursday, and they haven't officially ruled him out, but they're saying that it's highly unlikely that he plays this week. What can you say? I mean, this guy is one of, if not the best fantasy player when he is healthy every single time, but it just doesn't seem like this is the year for Christian McCaffrey owners. You're holding on to him, but just know that we're almost to the point where the team could just shut him down for just safety's sake. I mean, they already paid him. They want to keep him healthy. They knew they weren't going to compete necessarily for a title this year. we're not having a lot of reasons to bring Christian McCaffrey back right now. So you're holding on to him for as long until we hear that he's shut down for the year. You're holding on to him. But again, it's another week, another waiting game with Christian McCaffrey.
Yep, absolutely hate to see it. But like you said, they really have no reason to bring him back at this point. Why risk 2021? But yeah, it looks like no Christian McCaffrey here this week. And another guy, this one pulls at my heartstrings as well, because I've been on the bandwagon of Antonio Gibson for a long time. I was riding the hot streak here down the stretch. I was like, I'm perfect timing. And now he's got a toe issue, Ethan.
He does. He's dealing with turf toe, which is not what you want to hear about. We hate foot injuries on this show, and turf toe is right there next to the midfoot sprains and things that
it's on the foot.
We don't like to see. It's a big toe sprain. He missed the majority of his team's game last week, which we will not talk about in this video as I grieve. It doesn't look promising for Gibson, as turf toe isn't really something that gets recovered from quickly. I expect him to for sure be out this week, potentially even next week. You could be looking at week 16 as probably the most likely return date, if he returns at all.
And I know we've talked about this in the past, but when it comes to turf toe, like, when does that become like a major issue for a player? Is it when he's trying to push off or change direction? Is it whenever that big toe bends up? Is that when the pain happens?
Yeah. So with turf toe, it's the capsule of the big toe joint is essentially torn underneath. There's the ligament that kind of holds it all together. And what happens is that it gets hyperextended. So their big toe goes up too far, which is the movement that you see when you go to take off or push off your foot. So that movement is obviously very painful. It's incredibly difficult. You saw it on the sideline. Gibson could hardly put any weight on his toe. He could barely walk. Again, not a great sign, but we should probably go into a deeper dive this offseason on turf toe, because it is one of those injuries that you hear about all the time, but I don't think really a lot of people understand what exactly is going on.
No, you hear turf toe and you're like, come on, dude, suck it up. It's a toe. You know what I mean? But that's why I asked the question, because, I mean, there has to be more into it than just my toe hurts. So, yeah, it looks like we may be without Antonio Gibson. Maybe fire up some J.D. McKissick shares this week. And what about Mike Evans? He was somebody who was limited earlier in the week, and now it's just getting worse and worse for Mike Evans as the week progresses.
Evans is dealing with a hamstring strain. He was limited on Wednesday, but then didn't practice on Thursday. Getting demoted right in the middle of the week is not a great sign. It either means that he had a setback or that it's progressively getting worse. I think there's a good chance that he misses this game. His teammate, actually, Chris Godwin, is out right now as well. He had the screws removed from his fractured finger, which sounds horrible, but it's actually a good thing for him. He's going to miss practice more than likely, but he should be cleared to play this week. That's a pretty common procedure when you have, especially in your hands for a wide receiver, when you have hardware put in, that hardware can become an issue down the road. If you leave it in, the screws can get bent. And so usually what they do is they put the screws in, wait for it to heal, and then take them all out.
That sounds disgusting, but apparently he may be good to go. But yeah, Mike Evans going backwards in midweek, form is not what you want to hear at this point. What about CEH? Now, last week there was a lot of questions surrounding CEH, and it sounded like, hey, right before the game he's going to be active, he's going to be good, and they kind of pulled the old trickaroo, and he was basically just an emergency use running back that didn't see any work. Yeah,
he was dealing with an illness. Illness could be that flu. It wasn't COVID, because they would have put him on the COVID list. So we know that he was sick with something. Actually, interestingly, Tyreek Hill has now missed practice part of this week with an illness as well. So something's going around in Kansas City. The nice news about Clyde Edwards-Helaire is that he was able to practice in full on Wednesday, and he should be back to a semi-normal workload this week.
Maybe they got some bad barbecue there in Kansas City. I don't know.
They don't have any bad barbecue in Kansas City, Jake.
Well, they found the bad batch. They found the expired bottle is what they did. What about Ezekiel Elliott? Yeah, I know he's not the same Zeke as in years past, but we can't really afford for him to be limited. His volume is already limited as is, and so is his production. What are we looking at with Zeke?
Zeke's dealing with a calf strain, potentially a contusion or a bruise. I haven't really gotten an exact diagnosis on this yet. He has been limited the last 2 days in practice. He should play, but just kind of keep an eye on him on Sunday morning. He's one that Again, the team isn't playing for a whole lot right now outside of pride, so they could sit Zeke, but more than likely, this isn't something that should keep him out.
Perfect, because we got the Andy Dalton revenge game this week. We need us some Zeke Elliott. How about A.J. Brown in Tennessee? Now, he's been, it seems, out of practice for weeks, but he's still playing. He's just overall banged it up.
Yeah, he is. He's dealing with an ankle sprain now. He did actually have a noticeable limp in Sunday's game, but it was able to play through it. But what we see a lot of times with these ankle sprains is that adrenaline's pumping and they can kind of push through that during the game when it happens. But then after they get home, they take all the tape off, that thing swells up, it becomes very painful and stiff. Brown hasn't practiced as of yet this week. If he can't get a limited session in on Friday, pretty good chance that he misses this week against a very beatable Jags team. They don't necessarily need him to beat this Jags team that, let's be honest, is not really trying to win right now.
Yeah, plus, I mean, Corey Davis has been looking great in that offense also. All right, let's move on to some of our quick hitters. Now, we already talked about Chris Godwin earlier when we talked about Mike Evans, but what about my boy? Well, let's talk about Josh Jacobs for a second now, finally. Do I get to use him against you this week?
I don't think you're going to be able to. And
I'm
not just saying that because
he's
on your team. I'm sorry. The wrecking ball play style really has caught up with Jacobs. He missed last week's game. And we talked about this. His play style is conducive to these kind of, tic-tac, wear and tear injuries as the season progresses. He missed practice on Wednesday, but he was able to get a return to a limited practice on Thursday. This dude is tough as nails. So I'm not going to put it past him to potentially play this week, but I still think there's a better chance that he doesn't. The coaching staff has been kind of weird about this one. Earlier this week, John Gruden said that he wasn't confident that Jacob was going to be able to play. And then today on Thursday, we find out that, now they're saying, well, they're more confident that he's going to be able to play. So they don't really know. It could be a kind of a game here that they're playing some gamesmanship. Again, there's no advantage for this football team to be honest about these injuries. There's no competitive advantage for that. So could John Gruden be playing some tricks on us? I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah. What about somebody who I know that is very near and dear to us also, Kenny Golladay. Now, my Scott Fishbowl team that I'm in the playoffs for really needs Kenny Golladay. And it just seems like I get disappointed every single week because he's just not back in time yet. And it's looking probably the same this week, isn't it?
It's getting pretty bleak with Kenny G. I'll be honest. It really is kind of depressing, this weekly update on Kenny Golladay. There's no real news. He's still not practicing. There's not really a timetable for when he can return. There are a few reports coming out now that he's making progress. So I guess that is good news, but it doesn't look like he's anywhere close to playing. I think week 16 is probably what you're hoping for Golladay. And we can just hope, as I have him on my Scott Fishbowl team as well, that we make it that far to be able to use him again.
Yeah, because if that's the case, we've made it pretty far in a 1,500-man tournament there, Ethan. I mean, we're already among the creme de la creme. Let's just pat each other on the back there for a second, because we are up there and we're going to make some noise, but I would really like to have Kenny G. What about his teammate? Another guy who was about to explode, right? He could have been a league winner like 3 weeks ago, and then we haven't seen him since. It's DeAndre Swift.
This one's kind of an interesting situation here. He had a concussion a few weeks ago, now dealing with an illness that caused him to miss another game, even though he was cleared from the concussion protocol. The good news is that he did get a limited practice in on Thursday, but he still remains a game time decision as this team ramps him up. If he goes, I have a hard time sitting him just because of how dynamic he can be. But it does seem like maybe you're going to get another week of Adrian Peterson being kind of that RB3 flex spot because Swift just doesn't seem to be right now.
Yeah, he's just not, like you said, he's just not all there. It just doesn't seem right. Even Adrian Peterson came out and said he just looks a little bit different here since his concussion. It's just an odd situation all around in Detroit. We'll say that because Kenny G and DeAndre Swift, a lot of question marks. What about Julio? I am corn Julio Jones in Atlanta.
Julio's been dealing with a hamstring strain for most of the season. He was able to return last week to a solid 6-catch, 94-yard performance. I mean, it's not like Julio win you the week kind of performance, but at least he was startable in PPR leagues especially. He's been missing practices, but honestly, at this point in Julio's career, that's kind of to be expected. He's in that veteran. I don't really practice. We're talking about practice. He doesn't need to practice to be ready to play. I don't think there's going to be any problem with him playing this week.
Yeah, he's in that DeAndre Hopkins territory, right? They don't want to go to practice. What about DeAndre Hopkins' teammate, though? He popped up late on the injury report Thursday, Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, Drake was hurt in practice. You don't like to see this middle of the week. Now he's being listed as limited with a hip injury. More news is going to come about this on Friday, and as of right now, I would tentatively expect him to play. It doesn't look like it's going to stop him from playing, but just keep an eye on it. Maybe you check your waiver wire. Maybe Chase Edmonds is sitting out there. I just pick him up just to be safe. Might be able to get a start out of him. But yeah, Drake, we're going to have to wait and see on this hip injury because there's just not that much news about it yet.
Yeah, hopefully we have some more information by the live show Saturday evening. We can give another update on that. Another guy who popped up here today, Jamison Crowder of the Jets.
Yeah, similar situation to Drake, except that Crowder has a calf strain on Wednesday, limited Thursday. If he can't play this week, the Jets are going to be down to Braxton Berrios and Brashad Perriman, and that is ugly.
That's the Jets.
Yeah, that's the Jets.
That's about all you can say with it. I mean, it's the Jets at this point. I mean, it's not overly exciting. Jamison Crowder really the only guy who has weekly value, but he's got to be 100% healthy to get it. But there's a lot of names that we're still going through, but the season is winding down, and we're having to make some difficult decisions. And some of these guys, like you just mentioned, we need to wait until like the game time decisions for some of these guys because there may not be a better option out there for a lot of teams who have a lot of injuries right now. We're keeping our fingers crossed that as of right now, it sounds like the only team with any potential COVID issues is Carolina with DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. That's something we're paying attention to, but we'll try to have as many updates as we possibly can on the Saturday night live show. So make sure 9 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be going for another hour, 2 hours or so. Kyle and I will be on here, and I will make sure I'll get whatever information I can from the doc beforehand because that's where I get all my information from. If he's going to provide it, I'm going to take it. Right, Ethan?
That's right.
Except the only thing I will not take is a loss in my fantasy football league. So best of luck to you, but I'm going to wipe the floor with you, and it's not even going to be pretty. There's some payback that needs to happen here.
Yeah, you're going to have to tune in next week to see the results of this fantasy matchup because I can already tell you the trash will be talked, and it's going to be to Jake. Should we
make a bet?
What's our bet?
Like the loser has to do something different for the show next week. They have to wear a bag on their head or something.
I think that's a reasonable bet. Do they have
paper bags in your small town?
I'm sure I can find one.
I mean, we'll figure something out. But yeah,
brown paper sack to the loser. You're on.
Okay. Virtual handshake. All right, well, yeah, tune in for that next week. We'll find out who advances in our Dynasty League, but hopefully you enjoyed the content. Make sure you hit the like button. Maybe you're new here. Where have you been for 14 weeks? Hit the subscribe button because we'll be doing this kind of stuff all year long, and we greatly appreciate the support. So for myself, for Dr. Ethan Turner, hopefully you guys had a great week, and we'll talk to you later.